Hello and welcome to another mini English lesson bilingual. And today we're going to talk a bit about the common errors that we see Scandinavians make when speaking English. So even though English is actually derived from Germany, hence Anglo-Saxon, Scandinavians have a much easier time learning English than, say, our German neighbors. And whether that is because lingual similarities or cultural influence is up for debate, but the fact is that Scandinavians speak much better English than other nationalities. That being said, the Scandinavian economy is a lot smaller than all the other countries, so therefore it's a lot more important for us to speak way better English than, say, the French or the Germans. So let's go over a few of the mistakes that I see Norwegians, Swedes and Danes make on a regular basis. So what we'll start with is directly translating idioms. Idioms are phrases or expressions that we use on a regular basis that don't necessarily make sense when directly translated. And hence, you should try to avoid them as much as possible because they don't necessarily make any sense. Actually, strike that. 9 out of 10 times, they won't make sense in another language other than your own. And later on in this series, we will go through a bunch of English idioms in professional as well as social contexts that you can use to improve your English. So in regards to the idioms that your specific mother tongue has, I would say avoid them completely because more often than not, they don't make sense at all in English. For example, in Danish, we have this kind of tragicomic idiom that goes at sætte træskoene, which translates to put down or set away one's clogs. And it means to die. And it makes absolutely no sense in English. And this is a very good example of an idiom you should just completely avoid because it doesn't make any sense in English. So another common mistake I see a lot of Scandinavians do is not structuring their questions properly. So you have a lot of Scandinavians saying, for example, take you credit card. Instead of saying, do you take credit card? They forget that you can't just use the verb itself as a question. You have to say, do you? And it can be difficult to remember because English is actually, it's one of the only, I think it's the only European language, at least to my knowledge, where you break up the verb like that when asking a question. So as I said, the correct form of structuring the question would be, do you take credit cards? Not take you credit cards. I mean, they would understand what you're saying, but it's not fluent and you would come across a bit dim, so to say. Sorry. So the third area I see a lot of Scandinavians make mistakes in is probably the most prevalent area, and that is mispronunciation. So since English and Scandinavian grammar is fairly similar, this is the area that 90% of the mistakes are made. And I'd like to show you a list of some of the most prevalent mistakes I hear people making. And I've written them down on a piece of paper to make sure that you comprehend which words I'm talking about, okay? So the first one is found versus phoned. This is a very common mistake you hear a lot of Scandinavians make. They don't distinguish between the past participle of find and the past participle of to phone somebody, okay? You gotta be careful with this one. And this is a very common one, vine versus wine. So you have a vine is that thing upon which the grapes grow, and wine is that thing you turn grapes into. This sound is really difficult for Scandinavians to distinguish between the vine and the wine, because in all the Scandinavian languages, wine is vin, so and vin sounds more similar to vine than it does to wine, and that's pretty much the root of all pronunciations, the root of all mispronunciations. Sorry, for Scandinavians is that they will go with what sounds more similar to their native tongue. Hence why we tend to hear people say vine when talking about wine, okay? There's a difference. And here's another one we hear a lot of Scandinavians, another mistake we hear a lot of Scandinavians make is fin versus thin. So you have a shark fin and thin as in being thin. And this is especially hard for for French and Germans to distinguish between this. But you also hear a lot of Scandinavians make this mistake. So you got to be really careful. Make sure you pronounce your fins and your thins correctly, okay? This one is super prevalent. We got the free versus tree versus three. And it's funny, my grandmother is Australian of Danish descent. She immigrated 55 years ago. She still messes this one up. She will still count 1, 2, 3. So this is, I'd say this is maybe top 3 of the most prevalent pronunciation mistakes you will hear Scandinavians make. So make sure that you correct your frees, your trees, and your threes. A good way to learn this is to look on the mouths of people when they say it. You see, you got free, tree, and three. It's good to be kind of extreme when you're learning these things. Really over enunciate what you want to say. You go free, tree, three. And you might feel like an idiot, but you know, you got to learn. The next one is use versus juice. You especially hear a lot of Swedes saying this one because they'll say use, whereas for example the Danes they say juice or juice in Danish. So it's more prevalent in Sweden, I think. But definitely be careful to pronounce your juice, your hard J's, versus the U's, or what in Scandinavian would be a J, the sound, the Y sound. Another one is wash versus watch. So you got the sh sound versus the ch sound. Not so prevalent, but still worth mentioning, I think. This is a similar one, cash versus catch. So if mispronunciation is an area that you have problems with in general, you would benefit very greatly from learning the International Phonetic Alphabet, also known as the IPA. And it's a system that focuses on teaching you how to pronounce words correctly no matter what language you are learning. And you'll see the International Phonetic Alphabet in a dictionary. It'll be to the right of the word when you look it up. So if you're planning on learning more than just English, you will definitely benefit from learning the International Phonetic Alphabet. And it doesn't take that long to learn, so definitely Google that one. Another area where we see a lot of Scandinavians make mistakes is with mistimed pressure. So mistimed pressure, it's very hard to master for Scandinavians because we don't really have any pressure in our words. For example, the English word economy, in Danish, for example, is økonomi. The pressure is in the beginning, whereas in English, it's in economy. So you have Scandinavians say economy, or for example, autonomy, autonomy, or democracy, democracy. It's wrong. The best way to learn it is simply to, whenever you learn a difficult word like these, is to look it up and look it up in, for example, Google Translate, have it play it for you. And I'll show you how to do this later. And you'll hear how to pronounce it so you don't say democracy, autonomy, economy, because people will laugh at you, I'm sorry, but they will. And this pressure in the latter part of the word, it basically goes for the majority of the English words that are derived from Latin or Greek. In the Scandinavian languages, it's the words that end with N-O-M-I, so økonomi, or the words that end with T-E-T, like universitet, university. You really gotta make sure that you have your pressure timed at the correct point in the word. And my favorite tool to really make sure that I'm pronouncing the word correctly is to use Google Translate, as I said earlier. And I'll show you how to do it. So I've got my iPad here, and basically you can get Google Translate as a whole web app. So you just go to translate.google.se.no.dk, whichever country you're in, and you open it. I've got it here as an app on my iPad. You can get it for iPhone, you get it for whatever tool you have. So as you can see here, I've got the app open. I got it set to Danish and English, and I'm going to type in. Let's go with økonomi, and I'm going to press go, and it'll say right here economy, and I'll press the sound button here to have it pronounce it for me. Of course, my volume is turned off. I have to turn it up. And here we go. I'll press the volume button right there, and it'll play it for me.
Economy.
And it'll say economy, right? So this is a really good tool to kind of double check how to pronounce the different words. Definitely worth checking out. Google Translate. So thank you so much for checking out this lesson where we went through all the common mistakes we see Scandinavians make. And I hope that you have learned something you can take with you and improve your English. So I look forward to seeing you in the next mini lesson, Bilingual. See ya.